Well, it's time for another Lighting the Candle, a world that works. And here I am again, Bill Correll, with my longtime friend and amigo on this podcast, Ken Caputo. Uh, just to remind you a little bit, what are we doing on Lighting the Candle, a world that works? Well, we're having conversations with each other, and we're bringing empowerment through linguistics and language, and just kind of exploring what goes on in conversation. So every time you tune in, I want you to know we can tell that you're having a good time when we're having a good time. So keep letting us know and keep coming back and watching. And it's good to see our numbers going up week over week. So with that in mind, I will tell you that my primary effort and endeavor these days is in the area of networking, bringing people together and having conversations that empower folks to grow their business. And Ken has been in the people empowerment business for who even knows how long. It's just been forever. And I thought that today what we could do, Ken, how about we talk about the two major areas for people to be able to recognize and correct themselves. I'm going to say stress and uncertainty. We could pick any two words, but those are the two I'd like to go with this morning. How's that sound to you?
Sounds good.
All right, that's awesome. So with regard to uncertainty and stress, I guess it probably would be good for us to have a working definition. And what's really kind of fun is human beings we're continuity monsters, We really kind of believe that things will continue going in a direction that they've been going in a similarity. And consistency is kind of an important thing to us for some reason. And we also act as if there is a certain amount of certainty, and then we have this also a myth about control. So that's just all me talking and setting the stage for this kind of fuzzy concept of uncertainty. And the truth is, everything is uncertain, except for we couldn't live that way, could we?
True.
We have to have at least some semblance of safety as we're going through our life. And the more our thinking and thoughts are about being unsafe or potentially being unsafe, or hearing things that we were just talking about, taking a trip to southern Florida, and what's going on with, COVID reports and all that sort of thing these days. You have to kind of decide in life, and I think this is where you start talking in terms of an empowerment model. If you are not one of those kinds of people that say, I will deal with uncertainty and stress in a particular manner that returns me to a feeling of empowerment and being at peace and in balance, then you're going to be living a life that's pretty, can be pretty tumultuous and probably has a lot of a bad feeling in it.
Yeah. Well, I think life is going to be tumultuous,
yes,
no matter what, So, and it's funny. It's that, are you looking for the eye of the storm, or are you cultivating your ability to find serenity in the storm? And they're kind of two different things. So it's interesting. I mean, it always ends up feeling like control, any sense of control is to some extent going to be illusory.
Yes.
Because, it can all change. It can all feel like you believe you're in control until you realize you're not.
Yes.
That can happen at any moment, at any time.
Yeah, absolutely. I always think about what Mike Tyson would say. Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face.
Yep.
And the plan rarely and seldom includes starting off by getting punched in the face. So
yeah.
How quickly can you get back, to a center of balance. And that, I guess, for humans is, as you said, I mean, the two distinct models are cultivating being in the eye of the storm, or, you know, if you're not in the eye of the storm, and what's really so is that it is, you know, kind of outrageous. How do you manage to manufacture serenity in that situation? And what are your thoughts on that? What are some methods that people use? What are some teachings that are out there to allow people to return to that place of placid lucidity?
Well, I think that's, you know, the key is that finding practices that let you learn to recognize and connect to what balance, serenity, grace, whatever the words are that you choose to be guided by, what that feels like to you. So, you know, because it's kind of like, you know, it's sort of a myth, but that whole frog in the pot thing, you know, about, you know, you put the frog in boiling water, it jumps right out, but and it's not actually true. You know, if you put a frog in cool water and you start heating it, it will get hot enough that eventually it will jump out. So, but the metaphor is kind of interesting because it's, you know, the idea of, often we don't notice the stressors and the things that are building around us until they're adversely affecting us. So if we know if we've identified what the appropriate temperature for us feels like, now we have a starting place to be able to recognize fluctuations in that, and we can respond to them sooner.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, I mean, for me, Tai Chi was something, the feeling of practicing Tai Chi, it's, you know, it's breath, it's relaxation, it's movement. So it's, you know, there's all these kind of command over the body, and just the ability to let go with your mind, but still have enough focus and intention and awareness that you're not running into things around you. So, you know, so that feeling that created through the practice of it is something that, in when something unexpected or unknown happens or stressors come in, I, I, that's my place of, like, sanctuary,
Yes.
is not doing the form even or practicing Tai Chi. It's just remembering what it feels like when I'm doing that. And that becomes the thing that I can access. And it reminds me of all the things that I can do to find that serenity and navigate more effectively. So, you know, and for everybody, it's different. You know, it's for some people, our model is move, think, connect, fuel, empower.
Yes.
And, you know, which means that, you know, just noticing what that means for you, you know, do you find value in movement, you know, going for a run or a walk or gardening, you know, whatever it is. Is it learning something, reading something, painting something, you know, some kind of mental stimulation, or is it connect, you know, phone a friend, you know, connect to your higher power, whatever that is, you know, that kind of thing. Or is it thinking about nutrition or a good cup of coffee or something like that? Or is it like the yoga or the meditation, the empower part? So, you know, so just kind of connecting to those things, I guess.
Yeah. So here's one of the really neat things when you get to be a person of my age and have been exposed to as many different so-called self improvement or self-help or all those kinds of words that don't actually convey what the real idea is. They're training. You know, the self-improvement is like, you know, you want to do if you want to improve, start doing push-ups, you know, do 2, then 5, then 7, then 10. And then, you know, after a while, you get to the point where that extra one push-up is takes all the effort in the world. And then all of a sudden you can break through and do 10 or 15 more push-ups than you could, you know, when you were struggling the day before. So the interesting analysis when you look at the metaphor of the frog. We do bad things to frogs. We put them in blenders. We put them in hot water. You know, we really need to be kinder to frogs.
Yeah.
But all of that said is, you know, we're in a situation where if we are planning appropriately, we're going to realize that when you go out in the cold, it's appropriate to dress in warm clothing, okay? Or if you think there's going to be swings in temperature, then it's a good idea to bring something along, that will help you defend the cold. And that same thing, one of the practices I remember early on, Tony Robbins, he was very, very big on being able to recognize and create, states of mind, where your mind is in a particular state that you have designed, a place where you are completely empowered, comfortable, and, enlightened, and ready to rock and roll in life. And that in all areas where there's a performance issue for people, it almost always is alleviated immediately, if not sooner, by being responsible for their state of mind. So the muscle there, instead of doing push-ups or, katas, or practicing forms, the muscle there has to do with being able to conjure up a place where your mind goes, that you then have an opening, that you are, you've got freedom to move, freedom to create, freedom to be, So that's always been very interesting to me. And it's been a lifesaver for me at different times, having this experience with being able, well, we always had a ball when somebody would take the word, going to your happy place. And we, at one point I had a manufacturer of seating that was talking about the chair taking you to your happy place, So we weren't quite sure where those designers were going in the marketing team. However, the thought is very appropriate. Many people don't realize that this is something that you can teach yourself, you can learn, you can practice, and over time, it takes you less and less time to just change your state.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, it looks like a good reverse. If you were, to use a metaphor of a car, how do you get a car to stop going the direction that it's going? You apply the brakes, right? And then if it's not going the direction that you want, you can put the car in reverse. Well, you and I as people can make that decision as well. That if we say something inadvertently and it gets a reaction that we weren't intending, you can take it back immediately and start over and say it in other words. That whole opportunity to change the groove that you are in, as opposed to feeling like you're in a groove you can't get out of.
Yeah.
So
I like it.
Yeah, so I do too. And really the neat part of it is, all during my growth years, I kept creating these metaphors, For instance, whenever in the 1990s, when I was having a difficult time training people, folks to take over doing really difficult tasks in business, the next thing I need to do typically has more to do with getting into their world and understanding what's going on for them. And so what I would do, and I got known for having a so-called quick reverse, but what I was actually doing was I was employing the reset button on my video game. Back in the old days, the Super Mario Brothers, or just the Mario Brothers. You press that reset, you get a brand new guy. Go do it again and see if you can beat that bad old mushroom, right? And so I found that to be very empowering, the automatic disconnect and clear everything out and start over from fresh, And in many cases, I devised other little sentences when I'd say something that was completely wrong, factually, and then somebody would correct me, and I would say immediately, well, like I said, what you said, and I'd use their words. And that would take the tension out of the air, because I was clearly saying, yes, I got it completely wrong. Thank you for correcting me, and not taking offense to that, because many people, especially when you're speaking in public in front of a group, they don't like to be corrected, very often. So if you're out there in trying to do good stuff and trying to make sure that everybody feels part of a team, and you're creating the opportunity for leaders to emerge. Sometimes it's a good idea to be self-effacing. Sometimes it's a good idea to use that opportunity to stop talking and let somebody else speak.
Agreed. I guess the question that always comes to mind is how much of a priority is it to practice these things in advance? Like in your life. I mean, we talk about being a navigator, and I always liked, my mentor used to share the surfer analogy, where you got the person standing on the shore looking at the wave crashing down, and then you got the person who's practiced how to surf that wave, who's actually looking forward to the wave. And the only difference is the skillful ability to handle that wave, as opposed to, the same wave just overwhelming you and burying you, or you being afraid of that happening, or, whatever it is. So it's always just been interesting to me. It's kind of, I think a lot of times we get caught up in being in reaction to our own lives. So we're worried about things happening. We're trying to keep things from happening, or controlling things, or, you know, trying to create an environment where we hope it won't happen. And then it happens and we're kind of unprepared, and or we prepared for the wrong thing. So, I mean, I think about that a lot. Like you know, personally very into health span and just being you know, a healthy, balanced human for as long as I can, knowing full well that anything could change that. I mean, last year I got hit by a car that could have killed me, or, that could have changed all of that. Practice wouldn't have mattered anymore. So, so how have you approached your life in a way where the daily practices will give you the adaptive resiliency to handle what comes up and still be at peace with the life that you're living?
It's an interesting concept, and it just makes all the sense in the world, simply because um, having virtual experiences where you're not necessarily uh, it's, for instance, the person that's sitting on the shore watching the waves. They they have an ish kind of an idea, but it's clearly the domain of, if you're not on the court doing the action items, failing and succeeding and failing and succeeding, and then getting this kind of muscle memory, and in your body, the changes that take place where balance now becomes an integrated part of who you are, and it extends not from your extremities, and that's where balance lives. No, it's in your center, it's in your torso, it's in your legs, it's in your feet, your toes, it's in your hair. And so
Mhm.
a balance that then is there is now part of your what we call unconscious competence. It's just that you've done it so much, and the neat part of it is that it'll translate into situations that you might not have actually been preparing for. It has to do with this whole decision of you as a person saying, I am not going to let adversity take me off the court for very long. It's
Mhm.
going to happen. And what I was thinking of while you were restating that story of getting hit by the car last year, yes, and um, whatever preparation you had would have been very useful, and actually was useful, after you got back up off of the ground, and then took care of your body after that, and did the appropriate things that your training has shown you. And had you not been in such good physical condition, what might the outcome have been? It
Mhm.
could have been quite different than it actually was. So again, when you have made decisions about what you want in your life, um, oftentimes it just puts you in a place where there's a lot more options available.
Yeah. No, you're right. And, and that was an interesting example, because you're right. I mean, I was in really good physical condition, so my body was resilient. I've got muscle and, bone density and all those kind of things. So, and then I practiced riding bikes. I mean, I raced mountain bikes for a lot of years. So I practiced falling a lot.
Yeah.
And I've been hit a lot through the martial arts. So even the impact, but then the really interesting thing is the years of choosing to be graceful and balanced in my interactions with other people. um I immediately got up off the bike and asked the guy who hit me with his car if he was okay.
Yeah.
you know so instead of that turning into some kind of crazy, like altercation or something, he immediately reacts, relaxed and asked if I was okay, which I was. It was a little road rash or whatever, but it's just kind of interesting. So, and all of those things were years of practicing for a situation that may never have happened in my life, and it did. And you're right, just things applied. And it's just always fascinated me watching, just being a part of people's lives who, lived a certain way and did certain things, and when the adversity or the unexpected comes up, they just shine. Like, it's incredible. And it's like they'd literally been practicing for this thing to happen their whole life. I can think of one friend who was diagnosed with cancer, breast cancer, and the way she came through that for herself and for her support network and her kids was just so inspiring on so many levels. And it was just years of her, just choosing to be a certain way and practice in a certain way. And, when the situation she had no control over came up and it's completely unknown and obviously stressful, um, it was difficult and challenging, and she got through it, and we're all better for it. Every single one of us that she was in contact with is better for that experience. It's kind of
Yeah.
cool.
It's very cool, by the way. And the whole notion of preparation, uh, being your best friend when something happens, when anything happens, being prepared for something almost always trumps not being prepared for anything. And the fact of the matter is that most human beings are wishful and hopeful that something's never going to go wrong for them. And we used to have a sign in the locker room, Ledger High School football. It said, "If you play not to get hurt, you will."
Hmm.
So the thing to do is to focus on constantly being full out and being prepared and being in shape and all these sorts of things. But if you play to not get hurt, you mostly will get hurt. And then not only that, the hurts will feel like injuries. And the other sign that was right next to it is, by the way, we treat injuries, but we play with over the hurts.
Hmm.
So those kinds of thoughts have kind of carried with me when I remember them. And it's been very empowering to me to think in terms of when I have so-called downtime, this whole notion of preparing for uptime. And that carries over into sales. It carries over into public speaking, even these podcasts. A lot of the time that I spend looking at things online has to do with planting ideas and thoughts that I think may be useful to other people somewhere down the road or along the way. So again, just to mention, we're in the middle of this podcast, and I just want to let people know in case they tuned in or got in the middle. I'm Bill Correll, and I'm here with Ken Caputo, and we are lighting the candle, a world that works. And today we're talking mostly about things that are related to uncertainty and stress. So we've spent quite a bit of time talking about uncertainty and how preparation for something, in my humble opinion, and certainly in what you've expressed, Ken, we think that being prepared for something trumps not being prepared for anything. And so with that in mind, we can examine stress a little bit and kind of understand that stress, there is no is stress in the world. Okay, you can't go and buy a cup of it, at the pharmacy, and it is something that is manufactured by every human being, and it has to do with a conversation going on in their own head. Usually it's something along the lines of there's something wrong around here. There's something wrong with me, there's something wrong with you, there's something wrong with it. And it's undistinguished, and it has a lot to do with, again, people love to be in a place where they feel like they have some continuity from what was working, or a way to get out of a situation that's not working. And the whole idea is the difference in what we like to say in math, the delta between your confidence that you are in a certain trajectory, that where you have some so-called control in the future, or you don't, allows your mind to do things and create a bodily response that we know, like, and is all too familiar in terms of stress, right?
Yeah.
So again, what are some of the, first of all, people can train themselves to experience stress for an instant and immediately dispel it. There are people that are black belts at that, yes?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So for instance, you've got, let's just take, the model of the racing crew, who their job is to do a set list of tasks in as little time as possible. When the driver comes in with the car, they have different types of routine maintenance that they're going to perform in 10 seconds or less, 20 seconds or less, a minute or less, including, changing the tires and the wheels, right? So lots of other professions go through the same type of fundamental training. I mean, any professional, in my opinion, at the core of it has that run, hit, and throw philosophy. Police are trained exactly the same way to respond in every situation. And to the degree that they have time in grade and have gone through sufficient training, they're able to do that. Emergency room, personnel, doctors, nurses, the specialties, all that sort of thing. These guys are trained at delivering some sort of service in a particular way as quickly as possible to save people's lives. And so if it's available to professionals, is it available to you and me in areas that's not our profession?
Yeah. I think, one of the interesting things about stress is recognizing what your relationship with it is. And do you see it as an enemy or a friend? Remember Dennis Waitley, he wrote The Psychology of Winning years ago, and he used to talk about the only truly tensionless state is death. So, and stress is the gateway to growth. You want to make a muscle stronger, you got to stress it. You want to test the boundaries of a relationship, you got to stress it. So, and I think it's an interesting thing how sometimes, and being in a, for years in an industry where, the thing was stress management and getting rid of stress, there is this kind of, almost like this false paradigm of this is bad and we shouldn't have it, as opposed to, it's a tool that can serve you. And the challenge is just knowing when to let it go.
Yes.
So if you keep stressing a muscle over and over again and you don't give it time to recover, you're going to damage it, or you're going to have an injury, or you're just not going to get the benefit, whatever it is. So, so it's just kind of an interesting thing that I think the first question is, can you befriend stress in a way that allows it to serve you appropriately? So there's enough of it at the right time, and then you're able to let it go. So you have an argument with a friend, and now you're stressing over it for weeks, instead of, having some tools in place where you can let the feelings and, whatever you're holding in your body or the thoughts in your head, a way to process that, let it go through a cycle where it's not, going to be detrimental to you anymore. It's going to be something that you can utilize to maybe, you know, elevate or evolve that relationship, you know, when you talk to them next. So, you know, so I think that's the thing that I think would be interesting for a lot of people to consider is, you know, how do you view stress?
Absolutely. And I would really even be interested to hear how many people actually have an opinion about stress. You know, it's kind of
Yeah.
like, you know, if you were to take a look at diet and nutrition and all of those sorts of things, what they're finding is that there really are no there in the world. There's nothing bad. It's only when you overdo something. But almost everything in moderation has its time and its place and benefit. That said, most people don't have um, the mechanism or the training or the muscle in place to be able to make a moderate choice about doing things that they've decided are not good for them, you know? And that has to do with so many different things. So the whole idea of doing something or not doing something in terms of like going out to dinner, for example, watching what
Mhm.
other people are ordering, and then having made a very strict decision about what you can and can't have, and then feeling, you know, the push pull with regard to, well, wait a minute, that smells absolutely amazing, I can see it on the other table over there, and you know, I really do need to have some fried mozzarella every once in a while, you know. So, the neat part of it is that as time goes on in all of the area where at an early age it was easier to make things black and white, this is good, that is bad. And I mean, I'm thinking back, you know, child development with my two daughters. Uh, One of them, uh, the first one, the older one, when she was kind of identifying, you know, the two phylum in the world, it was, does it bite or does it not bite? You know, is it a biter? You know, does it bite was her question. And the younger one was a little bit more finesse. It was, can you pick it up? You know, and so if the answer was yes, you can pick it up, then it was something that would be safe and to move on. So as time goes on and we have more experience and the world gives us more things to choose from, black and white in terms of does it bite or not bite, it's not going to be very useful to use that as your determinant in terms of what you're going to do. So
Mhm.
as time goes on, you have to have experience with those things in life that are good for you in moderation, but not good for you at all, you know, in excess. Like for instance, what do they say? One or two glasses of red wine on a daily basis is probably not going to hurt you all that much, and may even have benefit, right? Having to do with what is it? Grape seed extract and whatever else is
Yeah, it's
wine.
resveratrol is the chemical in it. Yeah.
Yeah, so this actually has an antioxidant effect and may even, you know, cause you to live longer, right? So that's a good thing to know. And they say the same thing about beer. As a matter of fact, I can remember when my mom was pregnant with a couple of my younger siblings, that the doctor had said it's probably not a bad idea for you to have a stout, you know, one
Mhm.
12-ounce can of stout a day, you know. And so all of that said, who even knows if any of this is true, right? That's not what we that's not what we find out in terms of exercising up to that limit. And but we all know what it feels like at one point or another in our life, and in many cases, it's after football games or other things where you go to bed and you don't remember what time you went to bed, and you don't even remember sometimes how you got there, but you wake up, you know, the following morning and maybe not feeling so good, you know,
Mhm.
and that's where you've gone beyond one can of stout or two glasses of red wine. And what does that basically say? Well, people will respond to that and say, I can't let that happen again, right? Or whatever. So I'm, you know, using alcohol in this instance to demonstrate the idea and the notion of where do we, good friend says, when's enough enough? You know, how do we know when we're on that cusp of moderation now going to excess. And the whole idea of being aware of that, and that again, the distinction of there's a difference and a delta between what is good for you and what is not good for you. And a lot of people stress over those decisions.
Yeah, it's interesting. When if I'm working with someone, if I'm doing like some coaching with someone, that's the first thing we kind of go through a little checklist of, what are they trying to accomplish? And a lot of times it's what you're saying. It's like this more good or less bad type thing.
Yes.
So like weight loss is a good example. I need less weight. I need to lose weight, and I'll ask, well, why? And to, it's not challenging that they should be doing that. It's what's the reason? Is it because the doctor said they're going to end up diabetic if they don't, is it because they don't like their own self image and they want to change it, or they're preparing for, they want to get in shape because they want to run a 5K. It doesn't really matter. But the interesting thing about it is, what we do is we create this shift away from losing weight to living a lifestyle where you can track changes. And one of those changes will be your body optimizing. So we don't even talk about weight, we talk about composition. What's a healthy amount of fat versus muscle? And now there's so much awesome technology. You can get a scale and it'll give you, it won't be super accurate, but accurate enough that you'll get a trend line of, okay, it doesn't matter how much I weigh, I'm watching this percentage of body fat drop or muscle go up or whatever, and I'm seeing the way my clothes are fitting different. And more importantly, my energy feels better, or my blood work came back better. So it's what are you actually tracking? Are you trying to just get something or get rid of something, or are you focused on a result that you've predetermined has value to you, and now you're practicing ways to achieve that result? Like the alcohol is an interesting one, because I've been playing with that for a couple of years now, using a Whoop, which is one of those 24/7 fitness tracker type things. And one of the things it does is it measures sleep quality and also recovery. And so I test it because I love beer, but I don't drink a lot of beer anymore, and mainly because I've been focused on some kind of performance things. So I can literally watch the result of having a couple beers on a Saturday night at dinner, and then I can track on Sunday what that did to me, like resting heart rate variability, sleep quality, all of that. And now, like you said, now I can make a decision as to what's important, that, I'm feeling more recovered, or am I willing to have a couple beers and not be quite as good the next day as I'd like to, and it's a much easier place to come from, because instead of never drink beer or justify always drinking beer, it's like, how does this fit in with the way I'm choosing to live my life and the goals that I've set for myself, you know?
This is a perfect conversation, and I want to address this to the folks that are listening at home. We're talking about health. We're talking about building muscle. All this has to do with almost all stress and loss of power comes from a decision that got made and was forgotten about, that I'll never, ever, ever let this happen again. So that happens for people. And then something comes up and it may remind them of the feeling of that powerlessness and that helplessness having to do with when they made the decision that I'll never, ever let this happen again. But it's not pointing to the exact same recreation of that, whatever it was when you made the decision. It just has kind of like a similar feel, smell, taste, whatever. There's something about it, that it's in that realm of, oh boy, when I do something like this, that usually doesn't turn out well for me. And now you've got this stress going on, where it might be a social circumstance where, all your friends are doing it. Okay. And it could be something as simple as just going for a long walk. And again, when when you're somebody who doesn't walk regularly, perhaps there's a fear that you won't be able to keep up. Perhaps there's something else going on in your mind, and all of this has to do with um, a life that you are living, having in conversation with yourself about things that mostly do not matter and never take place. You know. And I'm trying to remember who it was that said, I've lived through a lot of traumatic experiences in my life, some of which actually happened. You know,
Yeah, I remember who said that either. That was a good one.
Will Rogers or Mark Twain comes to mind, but it could have been somebody completely different. You at home, I know you know the answer to this, but the whole idea as you're going through life is to create these kind of little opportunities to learn. And every time, I say learning is holistic. It's kind of like, if you know anything about laser technology and holograms and that sort of thing, holograms are this really, really cool construct where they're created, in a media with lasers. And what happens is that you start with a big image, and if you break off a piece of that of that material, and then you look at the small image, it's just a tiny version of the big image. And if you smash it into 1,000 bits, every one of those little holograms looks identical in terms of form and color and all that sort of thing to the big image that started from. And so I'm saying to you, what if the whole idea of having muscle learning, organic learning in any part of your life is holographic to any other place where that learning can be brought out, where it's now you've got more capacity, you've got more capability, you've got more centering and more balance. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. No, I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. I've trained in the martial arts for over 30 years now,
Yeah.
and I've never had to use it physically. And at the same time, I've used the principles every day of my life, every day.
Yes.
It's just I'm better for it. I mean, whether it's self-defense on health or navigating a tense conversation or situation or de-escalating a conflict that could be physical, or just having the awareness, of where I go and, not ending up in a situation that's going to be. So yeah, so it's, literally practiced and, to defend myself for 3 decades and never thrown a punch, except in training.
Yeah. Well, I also believe I've heard you say from time to time the successful fight is the one in which no punches are thrown.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I firmly believe that. Yeah. And it's, what's fascinating about it is you're right. Like the skills developed, the practice, the relationships, have have just impacted my life every day in so many unique ways. So yeah, so I mean, and how often does, what the things we learn and discover from relationships that, ended, sometimes just naturally, organically, sometimes not well, that ends up being the fertilizer that helps grow new relationships in more impactful ways.
Yes.
It all helps.
Yeah. Uh, so one of my favorite all-time quotes is the one that goes something like, what is wisdom? Well, wisdom is uh, experience. And what is experience? Experience, or well, what is wisdom? Wisdom is making good choices. Where does that come from? Experience. Where does experience come from? Making bad choices, So the whole notion of getting through life unscathed, when you started out as a 2-year-old wondering whether something bit or not, or you could pick it up, you have to go through a lot of experiences of getting bit and not being able to pick something up. And then as time goes on, hopefully, hopefully you're in the frame of mind, and this is that whole idea. If there's something in your life right now that you're looking at, I don't care who you are, everyone has at least one or two areas of their life that are just plain mysterious to you, you know? And if you're in that situation with your life, I've got bad news for you. If you want to gain more ground and more room to move in your entire life, guess where you need to focus? What's holding you back in one area is potentially and in fact holding you back in the whole rest of your life. There are people who are so accomplished in one particular area and would not describe themselves as overall successful people. They don't live a life that's full of enjoyment because they happen to be, an amazing person in this one discipline or area. And how do you and I deal with the differences between what we say we're capable of and we know we're capable of in our gut, and the difference between what we say and what we know and what we're actually experiencing? How do we hold that? How do we live with that? And yet most people do. And what they find in many cases is that when they're reminded of their shortcomings, they're not embracing that and going, oh cool, here's another opportunity to grow. It's
Yeah.
usually not their most inspired or enlightened thinking. However, they just decide they're going to avoid it. It
Mhm.
seems to be being caused by this thing or that person or that place, whatever. I just won't go there, you know? And it's kind of an interesting thought, but my wife had a 90-year-old aunt who drove until she was 96 years old. She had no strength in her right arm whatsoever. So she used only her left arm to drive. And guess what? It's very difficult to make a left-hand turn when you're left-handed.
Mm.
So she would plot routes to the store to get gas, to visit friends, whatever she was doing, that all had right turns all the way. The whole route was nothing but right turns. And yes, we're laughing about it, but is it possible that you and I do some of the same stuff? If we just look back in a particular area of our life, are we right turn people, and not necessarily in the what is it? Every which way but loose, right turn, Clyde.
Yeah.
So, kind of rebounding back to the center of the conversation here again, the stress is a good indicator that there's some area of your life that you are muscularly weak in. And that means in terms of your ability to create a state that works for you, that nurtures you, makes you feel, emotionally and spiritually fed. It's like a dashboard light that says, let's do something about this before it becomes critical.
Yeah, and I think it's important when you recognize that to figure out what part of the growth, what I call the growth rep cycle is. Are you in, should you be pushing at that? Should you be battling with it to stimulate, or do you need recovery? Do you need to let it go? Do you need to take a nap? you know, and it's hard because you don't always know, but it's like, you could have a tension in a relationship and what it needs is space,
Yes.
or it may need, a mediator, or it may need you to develop a new skill or make a decision as to whether or not that relationship's appropriate in your life anymore, so like we have all these choices, and I think that can really add to the stress too, because there's this fear of when you choose something, it could be wrong. And again, now we're back to navigating. If you're viewing it as, okay, I'm going to test something and then we'll see how it works out, understanding that I can take that information and I can test something else. And over time you get more and more skillful at, you know, uh, I think it was said to me, as many mistakes as fast as you can till you reach your inner genius.
Yeah.
And, so if you're coming from that place, while at the same time being considerate and respectful of the consequences of those mistakes, you know,
Genius
that
is
could be
always
helpful.
kind. You know, by definition, in my opinion, genius is always kind. Okay.
Mm,
So
yeah.
genius is an upgrade to whatever was there before the genius was inspired. And the inspiration of the genius is not an accident.
Yeah.
I really agree with you on two parts of what I heard you say. And the first one is that, yeah, there's tension there, but what's the tension leading you to? What's your choice going to be? Sometimes it is take a nap.
Yeah.
Don't just do something, stand there, you know. It's
Yep.
you really have to take the appropriate action that your whole you needs right in that moment. It's a very, very important thing to consider. We live in an age, um, self-improvement. Why do you want to improve? So you can be more productive and you can get more out of your time management, and you can do things that are going to maximize your time on the earth and all the rest of this. And so you need all these techniques and everything. We went through a demonstration of 10 different things that setting your mind up in terms of how you're going to manage calendars and what you're going to do with your life and all the rest of it this morning. And I listened to it and I thought to myself, man, that just seems like a lot of work. and
Yeah.
and when you're trying to maximize yourself as a producer, I wonder if the why you're here in the first place gets left out. you know
Yeah. Yeah.
we have this unique I say we have this unique responsibility to all the people that have ever been, all the people that are here now, and all the people that will ever come, to just be ourselves. We have
Mhm.
that amazing gift of being alive here and being able to dance on this earth for however long we get to. And with that said, being the highest and the most productive and most useful, and I mean, for goodness sake, if at what you know at what did you accidentally get yourself onto the ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall, and you're
Mhm.
very quickly climbing up that ladder, and you get to the top of the ladder only to find out, no, it's not the right wall.
Yeah. No, that can happen. And I guess the good thing is very often when that does happen, it's not like you're stuck on that building. You can climb back down, and maybe the effort will serve you in the next thing you do, and it's interesting. It, through the years, that's something that's kind of come up a lot in various conversations with people that I've had is, they'll talk about regrets or missteps. And there's always at the same time this element of value that, especially the real, like, people that are kind of in a centered place, they're like, they wouldn't change it.
Yeah.
It was quote unquote a waste of time or energy or whatever it is. And at the same time, they wouldn't change it because they're recognizing that practice, those reps are what are helping them now. So it's such an interesting thing how, I think that, and going back to stress, it's like, do we hold on to those regrets past the time that they have value, or my mentor, it's like a Tibetan phrase, and it's more of a question. It was, are you the sky watching the clouds pass through, or are you the clouds, that are just captured in place, and held by the sky? Which view is it? And so the stressors are like clouds, they come and they go, but it's not us. It's just thoughts and experiences and emotions, and they're human and they're appropriate, and we get to choose how long we're going to hold them and what kind of influence they're going to have on us moving forwards. So it's interesting, the people that have felt the most wise and balanced, that I've been, fortunate enough to interact with, all seem to, see these things as clouds that come and go, and they can speak very truthfully even about the pain of them, without them having any unreasonable hold over them.
Yes.
You know, it's interesting.
And here's really real, you're speaking about the clouds, and I'm thinking of, the Carly Simon lyrics, from You're So Vain. I had some dreams, they were clouds in my coffee. And unfortunately, we all view our thoughts like they're so important, you know? And
Mm,
I guess there's a statistic like we're going to have something like 80,000 distinct thoughts a day, Some we determine are ones that we want to hang on to, and the other ones they're gone. There's
mhm,
nothing to keep them alive and going. But your metaphor with the cloud and how your view of the world and your view of your life, if you're looking at the whole picture, the sky, the earth, the clouds, all of the people that are participants in this world, again, when you have made a decision that you're going to be a productive human being, wouldn't it be a good idea if you find out why you're supposed to be here in the first place first?
yeah.
What is your unique contribution? Every person listening to this, you have a unique contribution. Your DNA, your molecules that you're comprised of right this moment, how you're listening to this, it's never been done before. You'll never be this person again, you know? The old idea of you can never dip your toe into the same river twice, that's what we live. We are the river, we are the sky, we are the clouds, we are all of it. And
Mhm,
the other thing that I'm thinking about too is wisdom is not like an autocorrect. It's not useful to one person in their own mind. There is no wisdom until two people are in conversation. And the wisdom is always in the listening, not in the speaking. The wisdom is the difference that gets made in the listener's mind, that they then say, that has value to me. That gets me to a place that I wouldn't have thought about had we not had this conversation. And most of the time, when somebody is so called being wise, they usually follow that up with a little bit of an embarrassed giggle, you know? It's not like, uh, I've got the tablets here, I've been to the mountaintop, and this is how life works. Study these, practice them, you will be a good person, and you'll never have stress in your life again. It more or less has to do with this ability to go back. And as you were saying before, if you're remembering something that you're incomplete about, or it left you with a bad feeling or a bad taste, most people who are producers and live in the here and now, and I say that that's more important than producing an output or producing a product or being efficient in scheduling your time and your utilization at the end of the week. And if you're unsatisfied by anything, then that's the domain for you to grow. Your satisfaction, in my opinion, is the highest and best use of your particular time in life. Where does satisfaction come for you? How do you get to feel satisfied in your whatever you're producing? I say it happens that you're satisfied when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
mhm.
It's
Yeah.
a unique contribution. It's a unique way of looking at life. That you're efficient or productive in what you do as an endeavor, that's great. And guess what? You'll have a fastest time you can run at some point in your life. That is the absolute fastest you could ever run. And it won't matter 5 minutes later.
No, it won't.
Yes. So, how do you create a life that you love and love living in every single moment? And when you notice that there's something missing, it doesn't show up like terrible news, it shows up like something to laugh about.
Yeah.
So we're getting close to the top of the hour, my friend. We have had another great day of shooting holes in the sky. Uh, Lighting the candle. a world that works. And so I just want to say again, thank you, my friend Ken Caputo. It is a blessing and a joy to have you in my life and to go through these conversations. And if you're at home, you found us and you're listening to this podcast, but I want you to know that we are on all the major platforms, including Amazon and Apple Podcasts and even Audible. I still love going on and searching for our podcasts on Audible. Ken, any closing remarks?
No, I think this was good. It was fun stuff.
We're definitely linguistic surfing, no doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I say we're out in the middle of the waves as opposed to sitting on the shore watching.
Yeah, well, I guess the point isn't, we're not necessarily trying to get anywhere. The journey is the home. So, wander around and see some interesting things and, see where it leads you.
Absolutely. And comment often. Definitely comment often. You have to you have to record these little milestones as you're going through life with some sort of a feeling that you can return to when there's something that you absolutely love. With that said, thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back in the next one and looking forward to it.
See you next time.
Yep. Bye-bye for now.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, a world that works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can hear us at exvadio.com/podcast, Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts.